All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We did have a little bit of a topics conflict today with Brian. Brian had a conflict in his schedule. So Brian DeVore. So today we're going to have our participant colleague, Avery, is going to be our spotlight and presenter for today. I'm so excited because we've been trying to get this to this point for a while. So here we are. I'm really privileged to have that available. Brian's going to keep us posted on the TV show. There's another for Senior Spaces. There's another the next episode is coming soon. So as soon as he gives me the launch date on that, I'll have that information out for everybody. All right. So good morning. We're going to have Avery home. Go ahead and start and get started. Thank you.
Okay. I sent a request to share the screen.
Oh yeah.
There it goes. And let me just
That's good.
present mode. Okay, great. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Julie. Thank you, Skip, always for putting the groups on. And I was a bit bummed that Brian wasn't able to do it because I've been watching that inch up on the calendar. But I'm also grateful to have the opportunity because I am a fiduciary, but I do something a little bit different, which is what I'm going to get into. So, professional and family fiduciaries, and which is right for you or for your client? Let's see. My screen doesn't want to move here. There we go. I just have a disclaimer here, educational guidance, no legal investment tax advice. My lawyer said I should put this on everything, so that's only why it's there. So, what I love about the elder care industry is I feel like everyone comes into it as a second or third career almost and brings such a varied background. And so for me, I know I'm a little on the younger side, obviously. So I say my first career was caregiving. And it was my junior year of college in 2019. I got the colloquial call where my father was in the hospital. There was a whole thing. He fell down, and that's where it all started. So I learned how to get a power of attorney, advanced healthcare directive at the hospital bed. He had two houses, a lot of deferred maintenance, clouded title, weird. There was a strange lien on one of them, and he needed his retirement, a strange government pension that used an old system. And so I kind of dug into the financial side of everything there. And then throughout the pandemic, my mother-in-law unfortunately developed dementia. And by the time we were able to, after the lockdown, really go and help her and care for her, it had progressed quite far along, unfortunately. So we provided hands-on care at home for my mother-in-law all the way through the end of her life. And we did everything ourselves through to catheterization, medication management. We handled all the ADLs. And shortly after that, my parents, my mom and my stepfather, had kind of a health crisis that went on. And it had been boiling under the surface for a little while, and then it suddenly exploded a little bit. And so it was one of those situations where we realized everything had been several months behind. There were a few thousand in PG&E bills, mortgage payments, back taxes. It was a lot. And so kind of at the end of this 5, 6 year journey, I thought, this is what I know how to do. And so someone suggested I go to become a licensed professional fiduciary. So I got that license. Along the way, I became a national certified guardian, and then I wanted a bit more. So, of course, I became a certified senior advisor,
Yay!
which everyone should be.
Yay!
And instead of being a fiduciary in charge of other people's affairs, I realized that what I was really passionate about was being the person I wish had been there for me, who could guide me through the crisis that I was going through and help me navigate this industry. So I started my company called Setup Care, and I help families, as it says here, navigate overwhelming caregiving journeys. And so I'll get into a bit more about what a professional fiduciary does, and then as a result, what my goal is to do. But as we go through the presentation, everything I'm explaining that a fiduciary would do, my goal is to help an individual client, family caregiver, adult child. My goal is to help them do that. So I offer support for the entire picture, financial, administration, coordination, working with experts, other professionals such as yourself. My goal is that from the start of the process to the end of the process, and then even potentially beyond into estate administration, I am there as the client needs me to help with that larger arc. The biggest question I get asked is how do I get paid? So I charge per hour. I don't take referral fees or commissions. And then when I refer to you awesome people, I refer because, well, you're awesome. So there's no commission or referral basis there. I work with the client's existing team, or if they haven't met any of you yet, then I help them build a team, and help them choose who they want to work with. But they always make that final decision. So now that you know a bit about me, I will get into the common story that I want to start with, and I'm sure everyone here has heard this. So Max and Mary, they have a son, and they do everything that the articles and their attorney and that they're supposed to. They set up a living trust, they put their house into it, they sign their power of attorneys, they execute their will, they pay off their mortgage early, and they buy somehow a golden long-term care insurance policy. And then life happens. And so everything was there. They had the documents in place and the money was there. But after Mary, the wife, had passed away, Max has a physically debilitating stroke and he has cognitive capacity, but he needs full-time care. Like I said, the documents are in place, but their son, as life happened, now lives a few states away. The money is there, but how is it accessible? No one knows what to do with the house. There are all these questions that lead us into this idea of like the big question people always ask is, can Max in this instance stay at home? And I kind of based this off of a case I have right now where there's the golden long-term care insurance policy that's paying out $10,000 a month out of a $1.5 million benefit pool. And Genworth is perfectly happy to pay out for all the costs up to that level, but it only covers about half of this person's full-time care. So if we're anticipating, or if we're thinking about full-time, full ADL assistance, now you have the adult child who potentially lives states away, has no idea what any of this entails, and the parents were equipped, but they didn't anticipate things being so expensive or to this extent. And so we've all worked with this client as well, I'm sure. So the son is overwhelmed. He unfortunately has to take time off of work through the FMLA claim, figure out and negotiate with his boss and human resources. He doesn't know what he's supposed to know. He doesn't know what to research and does what I call midnight Googling. That's where I was. It was 2 a.m. You're trying to find the answers on forums. These days, I guess it's more ChatGPT. And he's being told by his friends, as someone else told him, that his father needs to move into assisted living. And he thinks, is this the only choice? Is it the right choice? And so then there's this junction where, of course, there's the problem of what should the son do? And there are the two options, which the traditional one is that he has to figure it out on his own. And the one for the professional fiduciary would be that someone else can handle everything. And so in this example, the client, Max, the care recipient, has cognitive capacity. So we're assuming that he can appoint someone else to handle his own affairs. And that brings us to the idea of a professional fiduciary. So the fiduciary, the professional fiduciary's only job would be to follow the exact instructions and exact plan of whatever Max laid out and what he wanted to happen. It would take the admin and the logistics away from the son. It would reduce the risk of conflict throughout the whole entire family, especially in other cases where there might be a lot of siblings, grandchildren, blended families. And ideally, the person has no emotional stake and is neutral and has a professional and legal obligation to do exactly what you told them to do. But this brings us to the idea. Another question I get a lot is the term fiduciary. And we've all heard that word many times in many different settings, especially when it comes to money. Uh, and it's confusing because there's a fiduciary duty, which of course everyone here has to their clients as well, because there's some aspect of real estate. We have a fiduciary duty. But the term professional fiduciary itself means more than maybe just a financial advisor who helps manage money. It's it's really about the trust that you've placed into that person. So fiduciary meaning simply someone you can trust. Now we add the word professional in front, and it becomes a legal term in California. So we are very lucky in California to have the professional fiduciary industry and profession to be regulated. You have to be licensed, and I'll get into that in a moment. Many other states have a patchwork system of who can be making decisions on somebody else's behalf professionally. There's no regulation, but California does have a system. It's not perfect, but it is there. And only the professional fiduciaries can make decisions on the client's behalf. So that's what's different about someone who has a fiduciary duty, which is to help someone in that position of trust. This is someone who, the professional fiduciary, is the person who is licensed to be making those decisions for private individuals, and then, of course, to get paid for it. So it is a regulated profession. It was regulated in the mid 2000s about in California. In order to call yourself and market yourself as a professional fiduciary, you must be licensed. The actual term is California Licensed Professional Fiduciary. And so if you see CLPF after somebody's name, that's what they're saying. It does get a little confusing when we're talking about conservatorships. Attorneys often refer to us as private fiduciaries or private professional fiduciaries. So if you see it in the court or legal setting, it usually means the same thing. We have to undergo 30 hours, a 30-hour state-approved educational program, and we have to pass an exam. There's a specific bureau set up to regulate us, the Professional Fiduciaries Bureau, and we have to renew our license annually, which is good from a legal sense and an ethics sense, because the bureau actually knows we have to report every single case that we take on and every single case that we close throughout of a year. So the bureau is supposed to have a list of every single case that one person would have working on at any given time. We have to report the amount of assets that are under management, and then we have to verify our continuing education. So a professional fiduciary can manage affairs for you, and that breaks into two kind of sections. There's while you or a client is alive, they can manage your financial affairs. And more than just whereas a financial planner would help you manage, the plan that you make, the professional fiduciary, if they're working as a trustee or under power of attorney, they can actually sign the checks. They can direct these and make these financial decisions, pay the taxes, sign the returns. They can do the same thing for healthcare and care coordinations. So, and a professional fiduciary can be appointed under an advanced healthcare directive and also have the HIPAA authorization and release. So in addition to attending appointments, the big thing is they can make decisions. And so this is kind of where care managers and fiduciaries divide a little bit. Some fiduciaries fill the role of care managers, but usually they will hire a care manager to facilitate the coordination of care. And then when it comes to making the actual healthcare and treatment decisions, that's what the fiduciary will do if that's what the client appointed them for. And then also step in as conservator, whether that's because there was no one else to help an individual who was already incapacitated, or if it's a complex or complicated family situation, then a judge or an attorney may suggest having a professional fiduciary step in. After someone passes away, the professional fiduciary's job doesn't end if you want them to, if you don't want it to, and they can carry out your final wishes really to the letter of what you specify. So, of course, they're starting with locating and protecting your assets. This goes beyond just bank accounts and finding where that timeshare is that you bought 20 years ago. It's also going into your home. They would be ideally photographing your valuables, securing them, changing the locks. They would make sure that every single safety deposit box, they know where every single valuable is and to safeguard them. They can also, if they're directed by a trust to buy, or if there is real estate inside of a trust or an estate, they can sell it or manage it by actually signing the papers in the capacity of the trustee or the executor or administrator. And then, of course, they would distribute the assets and funds to the beneficiaries and heirs. And then beyond that, they would represent or they would ensure that the person's final wishes could be carried out. Sorry. See here. Come on. Sorry, my screen froze. So when might you need a professional fiduciary? Because, of course, it's a professional, so it may not be for everyone. You have to pay for them as well, and I'll get into that in a moment. But a professional fiduciary is ideal when you have very specific wishes, especially end of life or funeral preferences. Even if they might be standard wishes, but you're worried that family members might not follow them or respect them all the way, or there might be arguments over them, then there's that neutral person who can ensure those wishes are followed. Especially if the estate is complex, large, includes a business, that's a big one. Tax considerations over the estate tax threshold. We're talking about generation skipping transfers. That's when a fiduciary is ideal. If there are strained dynamics in the family itself, again, siblings, cousins, a lot of heirs and beneficiaries that might not get along, might not know how to distribute everything amongst themselves, or even if you're worried about lawsuits, because of course there's the possibility that the beneficiaries or heirs could start suing each other or suing the trust or the estate. And then my favorite one is for solo agers who either have no family nearby or they don't want to ask this of a friend or of a family member who lives further away. And so when you're looking for a fiduciary, the best two places to start, there's a third place, but that's kind of a little bit of a self-plug. The best two places to start are with the estate planning attorney that you've been working with. They should know at least one fiduciary that they've worked with, and you want to know, have they actually worked with them, or do they actually know, or do they just know their name? And so if they can say, yes, I've worked with so-and-so, they're great, that's a good place to start. If you're in California, you can search the Professional Fiduciary Association of California. They have a database on their website. It doesn't always work super well, and not every fiduciary in California is a member. But it does get the job done in terms of giving you some names that might be in the area. If a client contacts you out of state, or if you're in another state and they're asking you for someone that you think might fill this role of a professional fiduciary, you can still help them find somebody using either the National Guardianship Association or the Center for Guardianship Certification. And so the Guardianship Certification Center, they are actually in charge of the California licensing exam as well. And so if you're listed on their website, you're either licensed in California or you have a credential, which is what I also have, of a national certified guardian. And there's one for someone who's been in the industry for even longer, for 10 years, and has to pass a really difficult exam, a national master guardian. And so when you're helping somebody in another state, the term you may need to be looking out for is someone who simply puts themselves out as a guardian. Because, of course, in California, guardians are for minors and we have conservatorships for adults. But in many other states, it's just a guardianship for adults. So professional guardians, people who call themselves private trustees, maybe private guardians again. And then in some states, it is a patchwork between attorneys. Sometimes daily money managers, depending on the laws, are allowed to step into the rules. But nationwide, the National Guardianship Association and Center for Guardianship Certification are the best ways to find someone, at least the initial search. And then the third way is I can help you, which I do. If someone's looking for a fiduciary, I have contacts in the association and I can help someone find the right fit, which I can get into a bit later. These are, I think, the four most important things when looking at choosing a fiduciary or questions to suggest to a client who's considering one. And the biggest one is, I think, the most overlooked. And do your values align with the fiduciary? do they, and maybe it sounds silly, but if you can, in a way, kind of confirm that you think maybe they're on the same even political or social value spectrum, if they are at least open to whatever your level or type of spirituality is, maybe a similar background, you have to make sure that you click with them because no matter how well everything is spelled out in your estate planning documents, there's a good chance that at some point something will come up where you couldn't have planned for it. And this person will have to make a decision on your behalf, guessing kind of based off of their interactions with you what they think you'd want. And so you want to make sure that you really click with them and that you would trust this person as a match. And the way I like to think about it is think about it as you're hiring someone who, had you known them otherwise, would be your friend. That's who you'd want. The other important thing is, do they know situations specifically like yours? So if an attorney refers you to a fiduciary, there's so many different types of cases that someone can take, and that referral may make the fiduciary feel like they have to take your case on. And so you always want to ask, would you be able to handle my family? Because they can be very difficult. I have a really big estate with a lot of tax issues. Would you be able to do that? And then again, the biggest one in terms of solo agers, my biggest piece of advice is to find someone that has worked with solo agers or is working with them, especially because you want someone who's going to check in with you on a regular basis. Because some fiduciaries, you'll put them in your documents, you'll say, hi, great, see you later. And then 5 years later, only when the documents come into play do they step back into your life. And that's never the ideal situation, but especially with someone who's going to rely on a fiduciary on a regular basis as their primary contact. A fiduciary for a solo ager should ideally be checking in at least once a year, preferably once every 6 months, to make sure that the person's needs are met, to help with any logistics or transportation, any health issues. Beyond that is what the succession plan is, because someone you can't if I'm the power of attorney for somebody, usually, unless the document says so, I can't just choose who's going to follow up for me. And so it has to be laid out in the documents as like Bob comes first, then Phil comes second. And so you always want to involve the fiduciary with the estate planning process. And more than just interviewing the first person is knowing who would be the backup that you would hire. So do they have a specific backup that they refer to? Do you click with them as well? Again, do they have the same experience that you want them to have? And then because people come in, especially to the fiduciary field as a second or third career, you need to know when they're planning on retiring. Because if they're about the same age as you need to make sure that there's another option in case they want to retire either before they're needed or maybe while they're in service to you, so that there can be a seamless succession and no one has to go to court and file petitions and ask for trusts or conservatorships to be formed. So, of course, it's a professional, so they do charge fees, and the costs can vary quite widely. Sorry, I'm losing my words. The nice thing is that professional fiduciaries with websites who are actively practicing have to put their fees on the website. So you don't have to have any awkward conversation to just decide if someone charges too much for you. The typical range in California is between $150 and $275 an hour if they charge per hour. 150 would be in less populated areas, and then of course, the more populated and busy an area is, the fee tends to go up. The one caveat I'll say is that some fiduciaries are slowly starting to creep up when they get really established and they have a lot of clients and they're able to say no to whomever they want. They start charging like $375 or $400 an hour, at which point you might want to shy away, because if they're charging that much to disincentivize people, it's probably not the best fit in the first place. The other way of billing is by a percentage of assets managed. That usually starts at around 1% of assets. This is common for trust administration. And so more people are moving towards the percentage of assets managed, I think, because it's simpler. But the one thing to pay attention to is whether it's a minimum fee, or they'll generally bill 1% of assets, or only bill 1%, and then whatever work they do after, they only bill you 1%. Some people will say I'll bill you 1% of the assets under management, no matter how much work I do in 1 year. And they might do a lot of work in year one of trust administration, but if the trust takes 3 or 4 years to close out, in years 2 and 3, if it's kind of plodding along, they might be charging you 1% to not do a whole lot. And so that is a big consideration as well. So if we go back to Max, the gentleman who had a stroke and now requires the full ADL assistance and whose son lived in another state, if we picture a professional fiduciary involved, we would say that a neutral party is managing Max's assets, figuring out those strategies of how to pay for care given what's available. There's less room to make mistakes. Things would go a bit smoother. The fiduciary is trained and experienced enough to know what the documents mean, which attorneys to work with, and which professionals are qualified and experienced to work with. And ideally would allow the family to focus on what matters, whether that's while the person is alive or after the person is alive. So the professional is the one who is managing and leveraging those assets and finding those resources that the family might not otherwise know of, like the area agencies on aging, California, the high cap, Medicare and insurance advisories, IHSS, all of these kind of other programs that most people wouldn't know about going about their regular life. You would want the fiduciary to be able to fill in that gap so the family wouldn't have to go digging for it. But that's a perfect world, I think. I mean, it's not perfect that Max needed help, but it's a perfect world where you can hire a professional fiduciary, they come in, they handle everything for you, and it's great. But life isn't that simple, and that's not the majority of clients that we work with, especially because only about 1,600 fiduciaries have gotten licensed since the mid-2000s, and only about half of them are actually actively licensed and practicing. So if we're thinking about between 700 and 800 professional fiduciaries for the millions of Californians who are either already 65 or older or approaching 65 or older, that's a big gap. And there just isn't enough supply, not just to meet the demand, but people don't know that they're available. And so, for many reasons, the fiduciary just isn't the option. Maybe the planning window has passed, the person already has lost incapacity, that there was a crisis or somebody passed away before the documents were in place. Maybe the professional fiduciary isn't practical. Maybe people don't feel like it's affordable. They're worried that the family dynamics are such that the fiduciary would kind of crack under the pressure or would ignore the case and wouldn't do a great job. And there may not just be a lot of options in that area, wherever the person lives or where the assets are. But the biggest one, and the one that's the most valid, is what happens when the family wants to remain in control? Because that is perfectly fine. Just because you might not know how to do everything doesn't mean you have to pass everything over to a professional. And so when that family member has to step up, but they've never done anything before, there are still options, as we all know. And so this is the common chaos that I'm sure everyone sees. Someone falls, ends up in the hospital. The doctor says, oh, they need 24-hour care, but they don't really specify whether that means someone needs to be with them 24 hours or they just need to be somewhere where somebody is on call 24 hours. And it's like, what does that mean? Now the person is freaking out. They get referred to a placement agent, which is great. Should always work with a placement agent. But maybe no one tells them, hey, you should go around and interview multiple placement agents. You don't have to work with the one that the social worker sends you to. They start touring a few places that they've never heard of. Maybe it's even the retirement home, the Carlton that's right next to the Trader Joe's. They've seen it every week when they go shopping, but they've never thought about what it's like to live there. They realize that they need a lawyer. This is the one, of course, where you fabulous SRES agents come in. They're not sure if they need to sell the house, how to sell the house, what are they supposed to do? Number 6 is my favorite because that's how I felt when I was in that position. If you asked me how I felt, I would have just given you question marks because I didn't know what I even needed to ask, needed to figure out what to do. And so this is where setup care comes in. And what I'm trying to do, which I think is a bit on the newer side and also is very unique from a professional fiduciary standpoint. Because rather than taking control of your affairs or of your parents' affairs as a professional fiduciary, my job is to be your ally or your client's ally and help the family remain in control. they're still the ones making the decisions, but they get to walk forward with the confidence of and the expertise and the connections that the professional, the qualified and experienced professional would have. And so I call myself an elder care strategist because I really like the idea of the strategy of tackling these situations that clients come across. And I like to think of it as my job is taking the chaos. Usually they show, people contact me during crisis, and taking that chaos and turning it into a step-by-step plan so that the client can focus on that single thing and they can come with all of their worries and they don't have to worry about organizing them. They can just start talking. And then at the end of the hour or 2 hours that I'm done visiting with them, I can help them start to formulate a strategy and a step-by-step plan that they can follow. So in terms of starting from square one, there's the crisis support. I would help someone figure out the biggest priorities and plan the next steps. I go by like a 3-3-3. So if you're in crisis, the next 3 hours, what are you going to do? Then the next 3 days, then the next 3 weeks, then the next 3 months. I stop there because when you start planning the next 3 years, that doesn't make any sense. But I help people plan through kind of like that. I help connect them with the right people. Again, vetted referrals, quality suggestions such as yourselves, and access the resources like I mentioned earlier that most people wouldn't know about, the AAAs, the Meals on Wheels, those kinds of things. And so working with me, it's hard to explain. I've really had to work on how to explain it to people because it is a bit different, the model that I have, especially because I charge on a per hour basis. And so typically a client will come to see me. They might be having a crisis. I'll do a 1 hour free consultation to help them triage and prioritize their pressing concerns. Afterwards, after all my sessions, I always send my strategy plan and notes that distills everything into essential tasks. If they want to move forward beyond just that initial one session and my initial suggestions for strategy, then I prefer to review as much information as I possibly can, because as you all know, everything is important. So I like to review the trust documents, power of attorney, HIPAA documents, the wills, and so on. I would like to know at least generally full financial information so we can figure out what resources, if not now, later, that we can come back. Where is the house? How much is the house worth? And then, of course, point them towards your direction if we needed to figure that out. I take a complete care history and an assessment through the client, the person that I'm talking to, about the care recipient. I think my dementia questionnaire takes 10 to 15 minutes to get through, and it goes really into detail, but I think it's come back in handy a few times. I think one was about I was asking questions and it was about colors and where they sit. And this person had to relocate their mother, and it turns out that she really liked sitting in the hallway. And so we kind of joked that, dementia is a different sphere that when you step into. And before she encountered dementia, she never would have thought of walking into a building and thinking, is this hallway nice to sit in and spend your day in? And so it was questions like, what are their favorite colors? What are their least favorite colors? What kind of textures or sounds do they like or not like? So that when those behavioral challenges come up later, we can say, I think this is what they're trying to say. I think they really just don't like the color palette of this hallway. And that's why maybe there are some behavioral issues. My favorite, and it's kind of combined, is to plan for today and tomorrow. And I like to say, I help clients so that they can focus on the thing that's in front of them while someone else is thinking weeks ahead. So I usually have like 3 or 4 weeks of sessions planned in advance, generally knowing what I'm going to start talking about priority wise and my bullet point discussion points so that they can focus on what's in front of them without having everything swirling in the back of their mind about what's going to happen next month. And then that way they can focus and concentrate. And when we get past what we need to do every 3 days and it calms down a bit, then they know they can take the weekend off rather than worrying about what the estate administration is going to look like, because they can know that someone is keeping their eye on it and will get involved and start bringing things up when it becomes important. And I like to say that elder care strategy is for every care situation. So whether they're a family or member or friend, whether they are in charge or they're simply a part or witnessing the process and they just want to know more or help advocate. Um, if there are complicated family dynamics and we need to brainstorm some solutions. One case I have right now, two siblings are co-trustees of the house. They really don't like each other, but the house is full of possessions and they have no idea how they're supposed to empty the house when they don't want to see each other and they don't want to be there at the same time. So helping brainstorm through roles and conversations like that. Again, I love working with solo agers, thinking through how they want their care to look like in the future, how they want to plan ahead, if a fiduciary might be the right option. That's what that 1 hour consultation is great for, because oftentimes at the end, I'll say, I don't think you really need to continue working with me if you need a fiduciary. So let me take down what your criteria are. I'll help you find somebody. And then if you want to come back and keep talking, we can do that. I'm terrible at sales calls. So I probably, I really don't do well at them. So I just tell people the truth about whether I think I can help them or not. And if there's no plan yet or someone is already incapacitated, then in that crisis mode, that's where I'm happy to be there as well. And I like to think of being kind of, as much as possible, both like the glue of the engine and the oil that helps all the pieces move together. So my job is not only to serve the client, but in the client's interest is to help all the professionals involved. So for the SRES agents, the example would be when you get those questions that are maybe off scope and someone says, what do I do about this difficult dementia behavior? Hey, what's this legal thing? And you think, like, might not have time to answer this. I don't feel comfortable answering this. I like to work with the real estate agent to help them stay focused on the asset and on their expertise and serving the client, so that when they call for those 15-minute conversations, the client in advance, working with any professional, we've already talked through the questions that they would need to ask, already kind of gone over the general information they would need to know ahead of time, so that the interaction can be as efficient as possible. We can find things that otherwise might have only come up later. And then really, for anyone, I can help keep the inbox down on questions that either would be a little bit outside of your scope or you wouldn't be sure how to answer. For placement agents and care managers, I love working with them, helping them, stay really hone in on the family's care needs on the ground. And then I can help with the other things in the background, especially financial and legal, those aspects. I tell the attorneys, especially, I can help keep your inboxes down when someone says, and you don't have to answer, hey, why doesn't the bank take my power of attorney? And, how do I pay this electricity bill? Um, and so for me, I like helping facilitate the communication. I'm involved as much as the person wants, whether it's just from the planning, whether it's being involved in the active coordinations. I just empower them to be the fiduciary rather than myself. And so that's about all I have for today. This is the other question I always get asked, where do I work? So I'm based in Davis, about 20 minutes out of Sacramento, but I work entirely remotely by Zoom or by phone. And I serve clients everywhere nationwide. Right now, I have a client who's split between Wisconsin and California. And so if there's any place or any system that I'm not aware of, I will learn about it to help the client. If there's a service area where I don't yet have contacts, I will help them find contacts. I will reach out to people like you, my other contacts, to work through the network. I will interview, if a client wants me to, I will interview options. I recently, last week, interviewed 3 care managers. I go through, here's what the different background of all these care managers are. One was a nursing home administrator, one was a social worker, one was a nurse herself. Here's where their personalities are. And that was really rewarding because in the end, we found one that really matched up with the care recipient's personality. And apparently they get on like a house on fire. So wherever somebody is, I'm happy to help. And that's all I have for today. I would love to take any questions anyone has about professional fiduciaries,
I've got a
or what I do.
multi question actually.
Of
Um,
course.
the you're implying that you do a lot of the work that some of the other professionals do. For instance, let's say the power of attorney, they have a very specific job in doing the work for their client, but it sounds like you're doing the same thing when you're doing the fiduciary role. And some of the things you mentioned, like in the real estate, it requires the licensing to do that, which maybe I didn't understand it, but it sounded like you were saying a fiduciary could sign papers and do transactions that involve real estate. So I just want to see how these separate positions fit in with the fiduciary role altogether.
Of course. I just want to make sure, are you asking about the professional fiduciary side specifically, or about what I do? That's
Well, either one. I was getting this from the context of your presentation.
okay. So I'll start on the fiduciary aspect, and the best way to put it is that the professional fiduciary is supposed to do everything. So assuming that you've appointed them as agent under power of attorney for financial management, as the healthcare agent under the Advanced Healthcare Directive, as the successor trustee to your trust or the executor to your estate, then they should be able to do everything that you can do if you've given them full authority. So they would be the one directing the process, signing the process. But the professional fiduciary, and this is really hammered into us that we do not do things ourselves. And I mean that in the sense of like the professional fiduciary shouldn't be on TD Ameritrade at 12 a.m. making stock trades, buying like Moderna or Tesla or something, working with the professionals. The real estate agents, fiduciaries rely on them very heavily to manage that aspect, and to do what they're licensed and trained to do. The professional fiduciary would be the one who would make the decisions, sign the checks, pay the actual contractors, and then sign those closing papers as under power of attorney or as a trustee when the time comes. In terms of what I do, and it's a great question, and I'm still learning how to. I've only been doing this a couple of years still, in terms of professionally advising people. And so I'm still learning how to explain it exactly because it is slightly new. I'm the only fiduciary who advises really rather than actively manages. And so I like to think that I look at it from the big picture perspective, and I help the professionals when the client shows up with all the questions that they need to answer, that they can ask for that interaction. So someone would show up for an hour. I would ask them, "How's your week on? What are you worried about?" They would tell me their worries, and then afterwards, in the notes that I would send them, I would say, "Okay, for the real estate agent, ask them about this, ask them about that, ask them about the inspection, ask them if you need to have a seismic engineering report done." Ask them how they want to handle this. Do they work with that administrator, the administration coordinator who's going to pull all the paperwork together? Ask them how the title company is going to work. And so when there's a question that requires expertise, such as the SRES agent, then I will say, here's what I generally understand about what the process is to help answer your question now, because I don't provide legal advice and I don't provide that special advice that would require licensing. But I can tell you the questions that will get you, I think, the answer you're looking for when you go and talk to your real estate agent. Um, and so that's what I try and do. And then also stick with the person throughout the whole entire process, whether they start from crisis and then to the care recipient to the end of their life, and then maybe potentially through to the trust and estate administration and beyond. In terms of attorneys, I will review the documents, but I never give legal advice. What I'm doing is I'm helping someone figure out what questions they would need to ask the attorney, if there are any errors, maybe, because sometimes some attorneys, maybe they're moving fast and they make some mistakes. One document, I think there was a slight mistake where it said it couldn't it couldn't be dispersed to someone under the age of 25, but the beneficiary was under the age of 25, and it had this really complex system that went through a custodianship for how the person under 25 was supposed to get the money. And so I pointed that out, and then they were able to go back to the attorney and have that conversation. But again, I never say, your attorney made a mistake. I'll say, I think you'd like to talk to the attorney about this. Ask them if this is actually what the intention was. Ask them what this process would look like. And so I help someone figure out the questions to ask and the order to ask them and who they should ask and who they should ask first. I hope that answers the question, Skip. Please tell me if it
Yeah,
doesn't.
thanks. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think Micklin, I think you raised
Yeah,
your hand
Michelin.
first, I
Yeah,
believe.
I did. I had so many questions. I don't even know where to begin. Some of which I think Skip alluded to. But you are doing so much. And you're not local. I was thinking, because I've seen you on one of my seminars, I think the one with Anne where she gave her testimony about how she put all her stuff together herself. And I certainly admire her for what she did because she said her kids will never do for her what she wanted done for her. And that
Mhm.
avoided some of the chaos. I'm dealing with one right now. But how can you do all that you do when you're not local? That's number one. Some of which I think you could refer them to somebody local. I think you alluded to that. But because of your age and because we're working with an older community, a lot of them say, well, he doesn't know. They would make a judgment because I certainly did myself. I said, you're so young to be dealing with some of these older adults.
Of course.
And that might be a factor. I like what you said about aligning values because I think that's very important. But when you have to see somebody once a month or once every or whenever the occasion arises, I'm finding my seniors like face to face, belly to belly type of communication. It has to be a
Of course.
special person who can handle, especially you said solo agers who can handle stuff over the phone.
Yes. So that's a great question as well. Um, I offer my services to whoever would want to talk to me. And the people who primarily come to me to work are the adult children themselves. So the Gen X people or the sandwich generation. So those ones, because that's also, yes, I'm on the younger side, but it's the same experiences that I've gone through. I went through a lot of those experiences with caring for older parents 20 years before most people have to go through them. And that's kind of where I walked into this field and why I really like helping people who are in that same position. So I know where the adult children have been. I don't have children myself, so I can't claim the sandwich generation part. I think parents are awesome, the most difficult and I'm sure rewarding job in the world. Um, and so in terms of not being local, I do work entirely by Zoom, but because there's no transportation of having to go somewhere and talk to somebody. A lot of my time is much more focused on I can review those documents, look at those statements, think about the plan, and meet with someone on a regular basis. I'm usually able to do an impromptu or urgent call. Sometimes if a parent has a fall on the way to the hospital, a client will say, "Can I talk to you?" And we'll talk in the car about, okay, here's what you need to ask in terms of Medicare Part A coverage to make sure they meet that the 72-hour rule so that the nursing home will be covered here. You should talk to the social worker before, blah blah blah, bring in palliative health, um, that kind of thing. So I do primarily work with the adult children. I love working with solo agers if they ever want to talk to me. I love doing life review sessions with someone if they're older and I never charge for that. I just want to know about their life because it's such valuable information. In terms of relating to the older people myself, I've actually, as a result of my own health conditions, in the past and sometimes I actually am in a wheelchair. And so that was a really eye-opening experience that I'm so grateful for because going, just grocery shopping and thinking about, oh, someone who's older and in a wheelchair and reduced mobility, they can't buy anything above the shelf. Now I actually started thinking like, does Safeway only want old people to buy like this brand of pasta because they can't reach the one up there? But and then also the questions about mobility and where people can go and what they can do at home. And so I like to think that I do have that association, that at least I can understand the idea of being having reduced mobility in that sense and needing full-time care. Because I have been quite sick before and have had to rely on other people, knowing how frustrating it is to not be able to just walk to the bathroom. And so maybe that's too much information. I apologize.
No,
But
no,
anyway,
no.
I
That's
hope that answers your question, Micklin.
because what
We
I'm
are super
saying,
privileged to have that information now, Avery.
it's great.
Seriously, that's
What I
amazing.
what I wanted to get to, Avery, is, and I don't want to hold your age against you, but it's building that trust. They don't know you. I've just become gone to know you from you showing up at some of the events that I've done. And I would love to invite you to the one I'm doing on June the 27th too. I'd love to introduce you to what you're doing. I could have used you 2.5 years ago because my friend and client, and it's so much, I've got a headache even thinking about her situation. It got worse. She was a solo ager and she had so much on her. Everybody had a job. I was set to sell the real estate. Frances was going to do her finance, and Marilyn was going to be on an as needed basis. Frances
Hmm.
ended up moving away. I'm still here. Marilyn's just kind of faded away. I found myself getting too involved. I couldn't do all
Hmm.
that stuff. So I'm finding myself now, this is a good lesson for me. I want to stay on the real estate side. I can't do all that. I would rather
Yeah,
prefer, because of my relationship, to somebody else and let them handle. And you come in as a fiduciary and saying, I charge XYZ and I can do this. And my referral to you should be enough for them to trust you as a trusted advisor to help them through the process. You get me?
sure.
I like
Yeah,
it.
I completely understand.
Yeah.
I completely understand what you're saying. And so, because I do the consulting work, the strategy work, I wouldn't step into those roles myself, but I really enjoy helping people connect with the SRES real estate agents such as yourself. I love working with care managers because they are the boots on the ground. And so, I think my work goes quite complementary to what they do, and then helping placement agents as well. And so, for those on the ground tasks, I will help somebody find a care manager, placement agent, real estate agent who they need to work with. And again, help make them allow the professional to be able to focus on things that are inside their scope. When questions are outside of their scope, then if I can't answer them, either because it's legal or tax advice, I will direct the person to the right professional and tell them the questions that they should be asking to get the answers they want, to what the language to use, what they need to understand is the general basis. And so
I just want to
in
add
terms of sorry.
one caveat, and that is what you do should be introduced early on. That's why I like these educational classes that I decided to incorporate in my business because people don't know what they don't know. And I've
Yeah.
seen from past experience, most of them will wait till there's a crisis because they'll say,
Mhm.
oh, I don't need
Yeah.
that. So I applaud you for what you're doing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, as early as possible. But and life happens, people get busy, and then the crisis happens, and that's when you have to you have to worry about it.
Exactly.
But yeah, I offer that 1 hour free call in terms of building trust, and so people can know me. I know I'm on the younger side; it counts against me. I understand that, but that's okay. Um,
When
anyway,
you
thank you so
build
much,
on the,
Mikla.
say if you take a 1% of the estate or whatever, do you build monthly or how do you do that? When you say by
So
the
I don't.
hour,
Sorry,
that
no,
part
please,
I
I'm
didn't get.
sorry, I interrupted you.
I didn't get that part because you said you, for the most part, you're hourly and people
Yes,
will say,
so
okay, explain that.
yeah, so yeah. Me personally, I am hourly. I only work per hour when I work with clients on a consulting basis. Professional fiduciaries who are actively managing, they would either charge per hour or on a percentage basis. And then when it gets into the percentage basis, that is very much an individual preference for how the professional likes handling that.
So the,
Sometimes they will only bill once a year when the
okay,
annual accounting comes up, and that especially happens when it's a court supervised trust. Sometimes it'll be monthly. It also depends a lot on how much capacity the client has. If the client still has capacity and is the one signing the checks, that's one thing. If the client no longer has capacity and then the fiduciary technically has to pay themselves, that can be a different and complicated process as well. So, in terms of when it comes to percentage billing, that is for trust and estate administration, well, trust administration, I should say. Estate administration, when it's through probate, there are set fees, and those will only be paid usually at the end. And
mm,
there are statutory fees, and then you can submit to the court saying, "Hey, I did all this other extra work. Can you please pay me for it too?" And that's what happens. So sometimes
mm.
it's monthly, quarterly. It really depends on what your agreement is with the fiduciary who's actively managing.
The reason
But for
I'm
me,
asking
I always do hourly.
she is
Sorry.
already about $150,000 in the hole. if I had known you
Right.
way back then, 2 years ago, she wouldn't be as bad off as she is. I mean,
Oh,
even the HOA has linked her property. It's gotten that bad.
oh no. Ah, darn. Yeah, I mean, we've all heard the stories like that in the industry. They get taken advantage of, and
Yeah. I
I think
use
it's
these
horrible.
stories to educate people to say, you don't want to be like Miss Jones. You want to start your planning early to avoid all this.
Sure.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you
Hey,
so much, McLean. I think Lin
Lynn.
Yes, thank you, Julie
is,
and Avery. I'm so glad you spoke today because I know we were trying to connect a few months
yes,
ago.
I'm so
You were
sorry.
not. No, don't be sorry. Life happens, and I understand. And you are in demand. And I want to echo Mitchell and thank you for your question because I have the same thing in mind. I don't know if you do this, but I know Richard Wexler does this. Is to be your personal experience with other people. So they know that you have done this, you've been through it. And I, like yesterday, I had some older folks come into my office and they're like, well, we want to look in the East Bay. And I'm like, why do you want to look in the East Bay? Oh, my son is there and we want to be closer to them. And they're house hacking. They have a duplex and they rent one and, they're living in the other unit. I said, well, what about moving into a senior community? Because
Mhm.
you don't have to worry. You want a more peaceful life. You don't want to deal with tenants because they're thinking 10th. And it's like because I had my personal experience with, my own family that I'm going through and, doing the 1031 exchange headaches of being a landlord, blah, blah, blah. Like I shared those and they were just like, we never thought of that. And they were like so excited. And thank you, Julie, for putting these amazing tours. In fact, I'm bringing my whole family this weekend. And it's like just opening our eyes that there could be a better quality of life with better services. And with your help, in fact, I want to hire you right now because I'm thinking of all these people, like including my own family. My mom passed away last year. My sister is
I'm
pretty
sorry.
overwhelmed. Thank you. She's taking care of my dad who has metastatic prostate cancer. Now there's the 706 form that our a trust attorney had told us we have to fill out, but she's also $720 an hour. And so it's fine, like they're
Yeah.
worth their weight in gold, but she's also very busy. And so,
Mhm.
these questions like, okay, where do we do? And they're given this spreadsheet and they're all confused. Do you help in something like that? And if you do, I'm going to refer you to my sister.
Yeah, so I can't answer those legal questions. I'm a total law nerd. So what I'll say is I I fell into this industry and fell in love with it because I started as a legal secretary. I was law school bound, then my
Oh,
journey happened.
me too, by the way.
And maybe law school, maybe one day, but I really enjoy helping people now with this stuff.
Right.
And so with the attorney example, so I charge $200 an hour. I don't charge the 720 an hour, but
Mhm.
it's a great example because someone will know they'll only get the attorney on the phone for 30 minutes 2 weeks from now. And it's what are we going to ask them? And so for the same amount of money, they can come and they can spend a few hours with me. We'll go through all of the questions that they would need to ask this month and next month and what they need to know generally from an educational perspective and really
Mhm.
those valuable questions. Um, and again, you have a second pair of eyes who can look through things and say, I think there might be an error in this document here. And in terms of like the personal experience, why I like the consulting work as well is I feel I have more capacity to see more situations in front of me and to help more people. Whereas maybe a fiduciary would be actively managing 10 cases a week. I could see however many people, once a month, once every few months. I recently just helped this last week. There was a care recipient who really wanted to and managed to participate in medical aid in dying. And so that was a journey that I went hand in hand with the family through. It was emotional, and that's been a huge developmental experience for me as well. Learning more about it because I knew about it, learning more about it. In terms of the legal side and really being able to help with coordinating and working with the lawyers, I am a member of the East Bay Trust and Estate Lawyers Association. Luckily, they let fiduciaries into this kind of stuff. I've gone to Sacramento Estate Planning Commission meetings. So wherever I can, I'm actually grabbing the same continuing education that the lawyers do. I've read the continuing education of the bar manual for living trusts, and I'm planning on, one day when I have the time, I'll go read some more of the continuing education of the bar manuals. So because I'm a nerd and maybe one day going to law school, I do try and grab the same information. So at least I can be that bridge between the really expensive, really busy, moving fast legal world and you, where you have questions every day. So I hope that
So,
answers your question.
yes, that answers. So, you're you're not a fiduciary yourself, it sounds like, but you are a concierge of sorts. When people are overwhelmed, they don't know who to go to,
Exactly.
what to ask. You're meeting them where they're at, and you're like, here's where I can refer you to. It does that sound?
Exactly.
And then you
Yes.
in the long sense of it, I mean, you can save some of the preliminary lower hanging fruits of the attorney's, time, right? Or times with them.
Yes.
Okay. So then, okay, I guess I'll reach out to you separately and then connect you and my sister.
Amazing.
And then, yeah,
Okay.
because she's feeling overwhelmed. Now we're concerned about my dad being in a walker, immobility, not being able to make, the bathroom on time. And I'm like, okay, how do I bring this up as his daughter? Like, Dad, you need disposables now. Like, this is not a fun
Mm,
question, How do we
it's hard.
approach this with dignity? And
How,
my
how, how do you bring those
brother,
in the front door? It's
what's
hard.
that?
How do you go to the store, bring those and say, here you go? That's a hard
Yeah,
conversation to have.
exactly. I mean, I'm his daughter, he probably changed my diapers. And so, anyway, we want to be able to, but like my sister's overwhelmed. So she lives with them and she's up, she's washing the sheets, she's doing all of that. Plus, working part time and, having to deal with all the paperwork that's coming in for my mom. And like, I want to help her, but she doesn't even know where I can
Yeah.
help, like where to begin. So does
Yeah.
this sound like a client for you?
That's a perfect snapshot. That's who I
Okay.
love helping. So please,
Okay.
I would be happy to connect. And yeah, like I said,
Okay.
I do the 1 hour free consultation. So I'd be
Perfect.
happy to connect.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Mhm.
you, Lynn. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, thank you for presenting well good information. Couple questions. First, are you a professional fiduciary then, or I wasn't quite clear. You say you are or you are not?
So I am licensed. I am a licensed professional fiduciary. I have the license, but I do not practice as one actively. So
I
because
see.
I work on the consulting side, so I help the family member step into that
Okay.
role that a professional fiduciary would fill. I help them essentially move forward with the same knowledge, expertise, and connections as if they hired a professional fiduciary, but to remain in control themselves. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, that's fine. Actually, my key question is a professional fiduciary. Once they got assigned, you were saying that earlier, they can actually sign the check, pay all that, as well as in our case in real estate transaction, they can actually sign in the contract, the purchase, or selling the contract, so they can do that. And you don't practice that even though you could because you are licensed.
Yes.
I see.
Yes, I could do that. I could represent somebody in that capacity, but I choose not to because I really like the consulting work. I do that for my own family, for my own parents. That's how I came into this.
Uh,
And if there was a very specific case, then I might. Um, but also based off of where I live, I'm far away from things. I'm not a big fan of
right,
driving,
I
and
see.
so
Actually, that makes
I
a
work
lot of sense.
remotely.
That will work better for you in terms of doing consulting, and you can
Yes,
do it by
exactly.
Zoom. So my next question is, uh, in certain situation, I understand the court will appoint that person to do that. But before that, if the person is still well enough, in an advanced situation, they would able to select an assigned you before they get into trouble or whatever. So they can do that, right? So if
Yes.
they are incapacitated already, the who can actually really select that person who decides that the family member what under what situation other than the court.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, the main one would unfortunately, if there was nothing in place at all, um, or if the documents were out of date, they named someone who isn't able or passed away themselves to manage things, and there was no alternative, and the documents didn't give an alternative, then unfortunately the main one is a conservatorship.
Mhm.
Now, as you know, like a lot of people, don't have to go through conservatorships if they're able to, through their own resources, kind of manage everything, pay for things. If there isn't a house that needs to be sold under the parent's name, then a conservatorship may not be necessary. And, you kind of go through the adult child and family member experience where you still might help them find placement, but it would be a thing where you wouldn't necessarily have to go to court for that because of the way the industry works, just on a practical side. But what you ideally want is even if you wanted to appoint a family member to handle things and you were to go to your estate attorney, you were to work with the estate attorney just to appoint a family member, you would ideally want the document to either give that person or other people the power to choose successors. Or there are different legal roles. There's like a trust protector, a trust appointer, things like that that can be written into the documents that allow someone to take control. And one thing that sometimes I suggest the clients talk to their lawyers about is when they're perfectly capable of handling everything while the person is alive. But let's say they live 3 states away and the house is eventually going to need to be sold. They don't want to think about a professional fiduciary right now. They don't have the capacity for that. But if the document says that they have the option to choose a successor or to appoint someone else, then maybe they'd like to handle the affairs while their parent or grandparent is alive. And then after they've passed away, if things get complicated with the house and they feel they can't manage it, then they might go back to the lawyer and say, okay, we're going to use our authority under the documents and appoint somebody else. That's the ideal situation, that the documents allow whoever comes next to still appoint someone. Either the chain doesn't just end or just have one person. That's what you would hope that would have worked out with the estate planning attorney. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to invite you to actually come as a speaker. I live in the villages of San Jose. I don't know if you
Okay.
travel on Zoom, probably a little bit more tricky. If you can come, that was easier. But I'll reach out to you. We can talk more about that. Yeah.
Sounds great. Sounds great. And that
Okay.
is
Thank you.
my email address, hello@setupcare.com. Setupcare.com is my website. This is my cell phone. Here, I only give that out to professional contacts such as yourselves or existing clients. So you feel free to text me on it. It is an iPhone. So, oh, you can't see it
Okay.
because it blurred out my background, but
All right. Thank you.
thank
So,
you.
and for all of us, we can have invite Avery to participate and to present at consumer facing events, and he can do it by Zoom. We have the technology. So, so for example, Joe, at the villages, in whatever community rooms that you have, you either set up your own computer or mostly everybody's got these systems in these types of rooms anyway. And then we just operate, as if they were there in person, but we just got you up on the screen, just like we're doing right now. We can do this consumer facing. Also, Joe and everybody, I'd like to invite you to the idea of whoever wants to do podcasts or interviews or other types of media, consumer facing media that you want to do in your marketing for your business, we can invite Avery and all the people that we talk about with every week. We can do these things. And it's really effective. And Avery can do his job even virtual, just as well as being in person. And it's just all
Yes.
we can facilitate that. So I just wanted to point that out. Lynn, did you have another question?
No, I was just figuring out how to unraise my hand. Sorry. Or is it raised still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nut.
Okay. All right.
Awesome. So I'm just filled with many ideas and lots of new information and gold information. So here's the other thing too. for us as professional service providers for our clients. So Avery's his tagline right here, if I can't help you, I'll find someone who can. This is what we do. This is what we do as SRES. This is what we do as CSA. This is what we do in collaboration with our colleagues and affiliates, such as Avery and ourselves, in service to the senior homeowners and the families of senior homeowners. It really does align, and he did mention alignment, and it's alignment with the being in service to another. This is the basis. This is the very basic idea of all of us as service professionals. So, did anybody else have anything to? Oh, Michelin, go ahead.
Yeah, I did. Did I hear you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, consumer-facing podcasts that we could do under this platform?
Well, I mean, consumer-facing podcasts, media product that you create for you and your business, the business of Michelin.
No,
Or
yeah, but I thought you
Yeah.
meant as a group, our senior real estate social network.
Do we do a podcast, everybody?
That's what I'm asking.
Don't dare me.
Why not?
I
Dale does one. He's very professional in his presentations, and God,
Who?
Dale Corpus.
Oh yeah, Dale. I know. Dale does a fabulous one.
Yeah.
And in fact, that does bring up a really good point, because we do have within our colleagues in our geography, Dale's in the East Bay, Avery, you're up in Davis, which is the Northeast Bay. But we're still all here. We're still all here. Yep. And we can take care of all of us here. So, yeah, Michelin, but Michelin, you're doing stuff too. So you should book Avery on your
I will. I just invited them. Everybody's invited, actually, and I sent it out to people that
I know. I got it.
Yeah. So it's June the 27th on a Saturday, 10 to 12. Everybody's welcome. And
sounds great.
Advertising through Eventbrite too, so we want you to register.
And we can do this. I mean, all of this is nationally. So we have, a couple of us are here from like way far away, but we're all still working together. And so we can bring all of this information to our businesses in all of our markets. And plus, we're connected nationally in a couple of different associations, CSA, SRES, Senior Home Coach. We have so many audiences and so many basically constituents, all of our families.
Should I bring it up to Dale about doing that with us?
Oh, yeah. So, Avery, do you know Dale Corpus? He's a EXP in East Bay.
Sorry, I do not.
Well, you will.
Not yet. Not yet.
We'll make that happen. All right.
Yes.
I just put it on the chat. I'm inviting all of you to participate. I have a new presentation coming up this Saturday. Actually, this is a perfect follow-up on what we're talking about here. This is really helping senior to think ahead of time, to really planning all of this. I help them use the resources to execute. I invite all of you to come this Saturday. Sign up on that. You can scan the QR code, whatever, or go to the website for that. That's this Saturday, 9 o'clock. So I'd like
awesome
for that. Actually, I was hoping, Julie, you can send this out to the SIES group.
Okay.
Just send this out. I appreciate it.
I will.
Because I think this is what it really more advanced planning to create a legacy, really help them to prepare. Yeah.
I do have one more question, Julie, for Avery, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Avery, as real estate agents, people can go online. They can read all about us. In fact, this is, where people come to us. They're like, yeah, we saw you online, blah, blah, blah. And I know that certain fields cannot, which is sad because, like, when I'm trying to look for a financial planner, I know they don't, post their reviews, or CPA. These are like people dealing with your money. But in the fiduciary, or in what you do, is there a platform where people's been really, pleased with your services that they could post reviews for you?
Yeah, so unfortunately, because I'll address the professional fiduciary side first,
Mm-hmm.
because there are only 800 that are really actively practicing or at least actively licensed. And the fiduciary business is almost entirely referral based. They usually don't do much advertising. They might do some online presence like Facebook or LinkedIn, but usually they get most of their businesses from referrals from attorneys or other professionals such as yourselves. And so they might have reviews from individuals, might have reviews on Google for Google Maps, but many of them work from home. And so again, that doesn't become an option. Um, and in terms of myself, I have my website and I'm still building up my public brand. And eventually I'm going to open a trust pilot. That's on my list for this summer. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but for the fiduciaries, it's still very much evolving. The Fiduciaries Association of California is still quite small. Um, and I'm actually kind of working, there's a new generation of us that have formed our own group, and we're really actively talking about bringing the industry forward into that kind of thing, where maybe one day a website and a national platform that is like that. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
let you know. It's maybe forthcoming, but now I know what to suggest at the next meeting that we should think about. Because that
Okay.
is a big question for new ones, for people
Okay.
getting into the industry.
So you're
So
saying on your website, like, people I refer to you, they can go on and they can see your reviews on your website.
not not yet.
Oh,
I'm
not
setting
yet.
it up this
Okay.
summer.
Oh,
Not
you're
yet.
setting up this summer. Okay.
Yeah.
So
By
here's
the
the second thing for me. Sorry. So when clients, obviously when they're interviewing agents, this is a big deal, right? Because you want someone you trust. And if they don't
Yeah.
know me, they're not going to trust me right off the bat. But what I usually offer to potential clients is a reference to a current client or past client that can, talk to them. So is that something your clients or you would be comfortable sharing, or not really?
I think, the thing is, by the nature of it being they want to remain in control and have it private.
Oh,
Um,
I
I
see.
think I do have people who will do the reviews for me. I have
Mm-hmm.
one I think that might do that's willing to do a video review for me.
Mm-hmm.
But because, they're not professionals themselves, they have their job, their regular 9 to 5 jobs. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they'll review as part of the consumer culture, but not as references, unfortunately, usually because
Oh,
it does get
okay.
quite personal.
Okay, got it,
So
got it.
yeah,
Okay.
unfortunately, that is just something that people
No
aren't willing to
worries.
do. Yeah.
No
and
worries.
and
I understand.
Lin, I put in the chat. There's a link to the Financial Planning Association website where you can review financial planners.
Oh, wow. That I need that.
Okay, it's in the
If I can
chat.
figure out how to get to the chat on my phone.
You could also Google Financial Planning Association.
Oh, I got it. I got it. Thank you so much, Skip.
Sure.
You're resourceful as usual. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for answering. Got it.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
No.
Next week. Next week.
Next week, what are we doing next week?
Next week.
Let me look at the list.
You know what we're doing.
Oh, seniors helping seniors.
Mm.
Seniors helping seniors with Simi Babar. She is our local Seniors Helping Seniors franchise owner. And it's a national franchise. We have 2 franchisees in our immediate neighborhood here in Silicon Valley. It's not quite as prolific around here with this franchise as in some other parts of the country. But this particular business model for caregiver agency is unique because, as the name says, they're seniors helping seniors. So I'm really looking forward to that for next week. Simi is amazing. We've met a couple times now, so looking forward to that. Just for all of you local people that remember the Meadows Retirement Community in Los Gatos, they are remodeling and revamping into a whole new life plan community by the Front Porch Association, a Front Porch Community. I put a little bit about it in the bulletin, and not sure when, but we're going to have a tutorial on life plan communities, which are CCRCs. It's just the new 2026 way of.
It's one of the CCRCs.
Yeah. Well, CCRCs are morphing into life plan communities. And and we're going to be adding that into our practice of touring communities. So, and then in addition to that, at the end of the month, we are going to go out on another tour. We're going to go to Lathrop or to Del Webb River Islands and to Regency Tracy Lakes. So that's the last month of July. I'll have more details on that. So I really appreciate everybody's time. I really appreciate learning.
Whoa.
Go ahead, Abe. Go ahead, Skip.
Active Over 50 Fair. Why don't you mention that?
Oh, yeah. So the Active Over 50 Fair is going to be at the Campbell Community Center on June 18th. Thursday, June 18th. We're going to have a booth there. Skip and I, we're going to talk about SRES, CSA, and seniors real estate.
But
seniors
beware,
real estate resources.
It's 10 to 1, only 3 hours long.
Yeah, and I'll be putting it in the bulletin so everybody can have details on that.
Well, then they can plan now, though.
Yeah, all of us local people. And then, yeah, lots of stuff going on. So I really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you, Avery, and everybody have a great week.
I put the link.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's in the.
Yeah,
Wait.
I put the link for the event
here you
on
are.
June the 23rd. I don't know if you could copy that. I copied it into my browser.
You know, it
Thank
came up with
you.
your. It
Thank
came up
you.
with your Slack page.
Oh my God, you got all my information then.
Well, no, you have to sign in, so that's not going to work.
Okay.
Send that to me again. I'll put it in the bulletin.
Okay, I shall.
Yeah, we
Thank
got
you.
time.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Julie,
you.
All right.
can I ask
Thank you
a
so much.
question?
Oh, Louise. Hi. Yes, my dear.
Oh, I was the late joiner again. I'm
That's
sorry. I've
okay.
had appointments today and missed almost everything.
That's okay. We're recording.
Yes. Is there a way to get a look at the recording?
Yeah, I'll send you all the information on how to do that.
Oh, that's fabulous. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Louise. All right, everybody. Have a great week.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Bye-bye.